welcome to the Unshackled Moms Alliance. Today we have a really special guest. Her name is Lori Twichell. And when Lori is not chasing Marvel characters or writing her own screenplays, she is hanging out with those who are in the backs of Hollywood, movies and Disney and Nike and all the things. So she's going to come in and talk to us today about purity culture and the effects that that has on our entertainment and where we are in entertainment today, as well as what the future looks like for us. So tune in. It's going to be exciting. So what does Hollywood reveal about to us right now, not just about the industry, but who we are becoming as a culture?
That's a good question. Let me think about that for a second. I think that I think what we see in Hollywood right now, the messaging in Hollywood right now, for the last few years, it's been dark and gritty. Like that's what you hear from everybody: realistic, dark, gritty, super, whatever. And
Yeah.
I think the pendulum is starting to swing that people want to see hope. And they want to see good things and they want to see light. I mean, that's why Ryan Gosling said that he chose to do Project Hail Mary, was that he wanted to show his children, like he said, all these movies about an apocalyptic future, about like, the end times are coming, you're going to be living underground, you're not going to have water, it's going to be a nuclear landscape. And he was like, what if we just did something where it wasn't a nuclear landscape and we did
Yeah.
something positive? And I showed my kids the future doesn't have to be something to be afraid of. And so I think right now, I hope that we are beginning to experience the cultural shift where we're tired of the dark and gritty and we're ready to go, okay, you know what? Things might be really ugly for the moment, but there's still hope on the other side.
Yeah.
And I understand where that came from because prior to the dark and gritty, everything was happy rainbow sunshine. I mean, it was the Brady Bunch. It was Gilligan's Island. Gilligan's Island was fun and light, even though they're stuck on an island.
Yeah.
Things were fun and light and they weren't realistic. So we did go to let's get into depth and super gritty and super realistic. But then we went super dark.
Yeah.
And I think right now, what people need is that what we were just talking about, all those headlines are super dark. And the headlines don't give you any hope. And they tell you that the end of the world is coming and it's terrible. And every decision made by the president or Congress is going to, and I try and tell my kids, when I was your age, we voted, then we moved on and we didn't hear about elections again for another 3 years.
Yeah.
And the news wasn't every day, all the time, desperate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my kids have no scope of that because everything is always terrible. The sky is falling. So I think culturally right now, what Hollywood is trying to show us as that mirror is that we are looking for hope. And I think the beginning places of that were actually the rise in Hallmark Channel things.
Yeah.
Because to counter the the ugly, gritty realism, people started looking for bubblegum for their brains, is what I call it. And people can laugh and go, you're not changing any lives or anything. No, but if that person sat down and laughed in that movie or had a break from how am I going to pay the mortgage or my car broke down or whatever,
Yeah.
then we've done something good.
Yeah.
That we've given them a little mini vacation of kindness and niceness and nobody trying to murder them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, what is that show called? Is it Sweet Magnolias? Something Magnolias.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I was on a group, on Facebook that was discussing that. And there were a lot of people who are on there who are saying, oh, this season is so boring. We just don't like it. But more people were saying, I loved it because I could check in. Nothing dramatic happened. It was just sweet little town. I don't really care that teenagers don't necessarily behave like that all the time. I liked that checkout moment. So like what you're
It's
saying is so true.
escapism. Yes, it's escapism, and we all need that because none of us can be confronted all the time with everything on fire.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we need those moments of, n- even if it's a half an hour or an hour of sitting down and going, I am just going to laugh. I'm going to enjoy these super pretty people And their biggest problem is they repainted the lodge a color that doesn't match the wedding. Can we get it fixed before this weekend? Or there was a flood or a fire, and it's minor stuff,
Yep.
but it's also real life. I mean, I have a friend whose daughter, their wedding venue canceled a week before the wedding.
Oh
So there's
gosh.
enough real life drama in that. Like, she had to move the whole wedding, and we needed to help them do things. So even those minor things can be big in the moment, but it also at the other end shows us we're going to get through. It's going to be
Yeah.
fine. You're going to be okay. I'll be on the other side of it going, yeah, let's enjoy that. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, totally. So parents today feel overwhelmed, as we just kind of talking, right? But by the amount of media that comes into their home versus, kind
Yep.
of what we were talking about, whether it's social media, TikTok, all the things, right? So what do you think is the
Right.
bigger challenge in the content? Is it the content itself or teaching your kids how to process?
I think both of those are equal. I think that we need to have a good number of content creators that are safe, that we know our kids can follow. One of the problems with being a content creator, though, is that you don't often know what is going to trigger someone
Yeah.
somewhere. Like, what thing can somebody pick up that becomes a mistake and you go viral for it.
Yep.
So, and I think that one of the things parents need to do is they can't vacation check out on their kids. That social media share thing, you can't just say, my pastor shared this, so I know it's going to be safe, and just hand it on to your kids.
Right.
Don't do that. Know what's going to happen with it. View it for yourself. The number of parents that I see going into groups on Facebook or Insta or wherever and having discussions about, is this program okay for my kids? I'm never going to be able to answer that for you. Because I don't know you. I don't know what your kids are.
Yep.
I have a friend who has 8 children, and her standards for what they watched were 100 times different than mine.
Yep.
And my kids would watch things, and her kids would come over, and she would go, those kids were misbehaving on that program before this and this and this happened. And that sets a bad example of misbehaving. And I was like, but they got consequences at the end. But for her, she didn't even want her kids to see how they might be able to be disobedient.
Yeah. Yeah.
She didn't want an example of that,
Yeah.
and I get that. You got to respect that. And, you know, let people parent the way they need to parent, but don't pass that off to someone else. I grew up in a home where my mom my mom and dad, even before they got divorced, were on separate pages. One worked during the day, one worked at night. I was rarely with both parents ever at all.
Yeah.
And when my dad left, my mom was left as a single mom, and she was working full time.
Yep.
And I don't think that she didn't have everything that parents have today. You had to go to the library or buy a book at a bookstore. There was no online, let me look for the best parenting book. You
Right.
had to go to the library and ask the librarian, what about parenting books? And there
Yep.
was no internet to go check, is this a good parenting book or is this not?
Yep.
So within the faith world, people found these organizations and groups and people that they defaulted leadership to. And I think they defaulted parenting to those people too. So when you have someone like James Dobson and Focus on the Family, that was a tangible resource. There were books, but there were also pamphlets, and there was a call-in radio show every day. And it was similar to what you and I were talking about off camera, with when people invite someone into their home on a daily basis, they feel like they're friends.
Yep.
When James Dobson is in your car with you discussing important things, and
Yep.
you are a single mom who is overwhelmed, you can just look at your kid and go, listen to what he's saying. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it was bad parenting. It was the parenting that was available. And if the church is pushing James Dobson things, then no one's stopping to ask, wait, where are we putting the blame here? What is the longer term lesson? I had a friend who told me once that 90% of the world walks around with water up to here. And it isn't the 4 feet of water before you get here that drowns you, it's the last inch.
Yeah.
And if you think about that in today's society, that it's only this much to put someone under, then you would look at the comments more carefully. You would wonder, am I adding that last bit of water that's going to put that person under with my judgmental thoughts or with my whatever? And I think that we defaulted to leaders that were teaching something, and now we're seeing the consequences of those things that were being taught. I also think the world you're seeing, and people laugh when I say this, but in America, we had Fred Rogers, we had the electric company, and we had Sesame Street. And there was an
Yep.
entire generation that was raised by those people. We learned to read. We learned, how things are made. Mr. Rogers taught us emotional regulation. He would say it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be scared. And when that was removed from the general consciousness, we lost a lifeline that we all had where somebody was saying, "You're okay."
Yeah.
I mean, I could be sitting alone at my house, not having seen either parent because my mom left before I got up in the morning. My dad would be leaving for work and work all night. But I had an adult who was looking at me and saying it's okay and
Yeah.
giving regulation. Nowadays, the content isn't that as much. And I think that we're seeing generations that have been raised in a dearth of kindness. And with that gritty reality that we talked about, we are seeing a generation of parents who feel like you have to tell everybody everything and that you are allowed to be angry at everything because there wasn't emotional regulation that was taught. And so I think that you can see that in coming out. You can see what happens with the culture wars
Yeah.
when things like that go on.
Yeah. I think you brought up some really great points. So first of all, I want to touch on the whole James Dobson piece, right? So, um, if you are a busy single mom, or if you are just like, you do not have time to go to the library and you do not have the money to go buy a bookstore, and this, like, it's handed to you on a silver platter. James
Right.
Dobson is, the Christian guru, and this is what he says to do. And even if maybe as a mom you feel uncomfortable with that, it's like, okay, but this is what everybody's doing, and I don't really have time to look at anything else. So I'm going to do whatever James
Right.
Dobson says, right? And
Yep.
then, and now you have people who struggle with, and I don't think they understand that fully, because we have so much information that is access to us right now, that they don't understand that truly, and be able to give grace to their parents because of
Right.
during, that time they may have been harmed or whatever. So,
Right.
I think that is just so important to bring out. So how can parents who
Yeah.
go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to agree with you wholeheartedly. I think if people talk about biblical context, and they're starting to dive into what was happening at the time when this was said or what is the original Greek. They're starting to do that now with all that information. We didn't have any of those options in the 80s, and our parents didn't have any of those options.
No.
And there was no, and I think if people start looking and realizing church was the culture, and if the church is saying listen to James Dobson and the church has a library and it's free,
Yep.
it's all right there. And for my mom has a high school degree. She wasn't further educated because in that era people weren't necessarily promoted, especially women were not promoted to go to college and get educated unless you were going to teach
Yep.
or be a nurse. Those are acceptable things for women. And if you don't have that education, you're going to lean and rely on somebody who understands theology better than you.
Yep.
You're going to lean and understand on somebody. He's got a doctorate. He has a radio program that's in my car every day.
Yep.
Of course, I'm going to lean on that. My pastor says it's okay. And for me, my mom never talked to me about the birds and the bees or puberty or anything. I came home from school one day and she was at work and there was a cassette tape, one of the little cassette things on my bed with a note that said play me. And it was Dr. James Dobson's program on puberty. And I played the radio show on cassette and she came home and said, "Did you listen?" "Yep." "Was there a discussion?" "No." "Were there any questions?" Why? But my mom didn't want to talk about any of it. It was, do you know what I mean? James Dobson is the expert and he told you everything. And it was just easier to go, nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
so now you have a generation our age that was taught not to ask questions. And we are. We're the people who are changing the narrative because we were told this is what it is and you just need to accept that. Millennials and Gen Z and all the people who are questioning, you're getting those questions because we raised you to ask the questions.
Yeah.
So don't
Yep.
assume that we were part of that problem. We might have problems. I'm not saying we are perfect, but we're trying to guide you better and not have a lost latchkey generation.
Yeah. So what are
So
some
that's, I
questions
mean, that's my thought.
So what are some questions families should be asking after watching a movie together that, to stimulate some of those conversations? Because I think that, you brought up a really good point. We really were the latchkey kids, right? I joke all the time about, at 13, I was babysitting a newborn. I had a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and we're watching
Yep.
them all together, right? And I'm 13 years old.
Yep. And you made dinner and had it ready when your parents got
Yeah.
home from work.
Yep.
At least for
That's
me,
right.
I would come home and the notes were all over the house. The pot roast is in the oven, put it or in the fridge, put it in here at this time, make sure dinner's ready, make sure and we were very much the free range generation.
Yep.
So, my thing that I think that parents should be asking first, watch it first yourself. It's hard when kids get pressured and all their friends are watching it, but make a plan to read the book yourself, watch the book yourself. Don't just go on what your kids are saying because your kids are saying stuff because of what they've seen on TikTok or at school. And
Yep.
then that way you also know, I mean, I had a kid who had sleeping issues. He had a sleeping disorder, and so that you don't think about the number of programs where sleep is a curse or putting you to sleep. And like,
Yep.
I remember we were watching Once Upon a Time and there was a whole Sleeping Beauty segment and it was horrifying. It was like a nightmare being put to sleep. And my son was dealing with being terrified of falling asleep. And so when they make it a horrible, bad, demonic curse to sleep, but that wouldn't carry to everybody. So I wouldn't ever begin to put online, we shouldn't be saying these things because children might be afraid to get like, no, that was our story.
Yep.
And I needed to understand it for my home.
Yep.
And I would not be afraid of mainstream things because you can find God in mainstream movies and television shows. I have a Bible study that I wrote about the movie Moulin Rouge
Mhm.
because there are biblical themes throughout Moulin Rouge. I have an entire, I mean, I've had a church that taught this. I had an entire lesson that you could teach a youth group about watching Wreck-It Ralph and the biblical principles that you can find in the movie Wreck-It Ralph. You just have to watch and then figure out what your kids need and what they don't need.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid of something just because you don't understand it,
Yeah. Yeah,
or
I
you might
think
hear that.
it's so important to teach your kids critical thinking skills. Like right now, the Demon Hunter show is like really popular, and like some Christian parents are like, "Oh, we watch it." Some are like, "Oh, we're not." But really, like, what a great opportunity to watch this
Yes,
show that's super popular and talk about different pieces. Like, if you have an issue with it, like, let's stop, let's have a discussion about
right.
this. What do you think about this? This is what they're saying. What do you think? It's just
Yep,
it's so important. I think we live in a world where there's, like, say, so much information out there that if your kids have not been exposed by you and at home, then they're not going to know how to deal with things that come out. Like, if
exactly.
it's so important. I think it's so important to expose kids to all kinds of different things and have different conversations about what does the Bible say, but also have conversations about what do you think? Why do you think this way? There's nothing
Right.
greater than developing that relationship with your kids where you can have discussions about things that come up in the news, things that are coming, trends that are happening on social media, and movies and TVs and all those different pieces.
Yes, and I think it's important not and this is happening a lot, and I think we're gonna see the fruit of this, and I don't think it's going to be a good fruit. But what is happening a lot in faith homes right now is that anything that is outside what you believe is evil,
Yeah.
and those people are evil, which dehumanizes someone who's never been to church, never been raised in church,
Yep.
and doesn't allow you to reach them. And it teaches your children to be afraid of, or to battle, immediately go into battle just because someone doesn't see things the same way that you do.
Yep.
I remember when I very first got married, I babysat for someone and we watched I Love Lucy. And I thought,
Mhm.
that's a safe program. Like, who's going to have a problem with I Love Lucy?
Right?
And it was the Vitamita Vegemin episode where she's drinking and it's alcohol and she's getting more and more and more drunk. Well,
Yes.
I did not know that these people had taught their daughter that alcohol is poison.
Oh, wow.
And that came because the man's mom was an alcoholic who drank herself to death. And he
Yep.
wanted to teach his children to avoid alcohol. And the best way to teach them was to terrify them of
Ugh.
it. And so this little girl could not figure out why people were laughing as Lucy was drinking the Vitamina Vegemin and getting drunk because they're all watching her die. And we need to be very, very, very careful because that was not the truth
Right.
in any way, shape, or form.
Yep.
But you have raised a daughter to believe that poison is alcohol and that any alcohol that you drink is poison. So when you take them out into the world and they go to college, they're going to see everybody drinking around them
Yep.
and they're going to learn that wasn't actually poison. Then what do they think about every other thing that you taught them?
Yeah.
You have taught them
Exactly.
a lie
Yeah. That's right.
and
That's
you
right.
raised them in fear. So now they're going to go out and go, I can drink. I'm not dying. My friends are not dying. Let me
Yep.
try all these other things that they told me not to do.
Yep.
You, the point, yes, you're raising children and you need to let kids be kids. Our generation didn't. We kind of skipped childhood and went straight to adulthood. But you're also trying to raise people to be a functioning adult. And the
Yep.
reality is, most parents only think about what's happening in their house every day. And they don't stop to think, this lesson that I'm teaching this child right now, what is it going to do for them when they're 25 and they're out in the world?
Yep.
How is it going to help them learn to function within that society?
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Because society is not going to get better, right? Like
No.
it's not your kids are going to we're exposed to a lot now. They're going to be exposed to a lot more in 10 years,
Yep.
right? And so you
Yep.
need to be able to give them the discerning spirit to be able to have the skills to go, okay, this is what I believe and this is why I believe it.
Right. Exactly. And to understand it. I remember I had a friend in high school who, um, she couldn't explain certain things biblically, but she was trying to talk to people about why they should accept Christ. And as soon as as soon as she got challenged, she didn't have an answer for it
Yep.
because she had been raised not to do that. With all of the information that we have out there today, and you're right, it's just going to get worse and worse. With all that information that we have out there today, we need to teach. The information isn't going away.
Yep.
We need to teach our kids how to recognize what is AI, what is real,
Mhm.
what is rage bait. This morning I was looking at something and this one person just kept arguing and they were being horrible a person. And I clicked on their profile and they have one friend and one post.
Yep.
And all these people were arguing with them. And I literally came in and went, Wendy is a bot.
Yeah.
Or this is, they're like, why are you guys engaging with it? And social media algorithms don't say this is good engagement, this is bad engagement. They just go, there are 200 comments on this post.
Yep.
This is engagement, and they will raise it up through the algorithm. And then your algorithm starts turning into more and more and more bots because that's how they get you engaging.
Yeah.
And on social media, you are not the customer. You know, they say the customer is always right. And you still see people demanding this and demanding that. In social media, you are not the customer,
Yep.
you are the product.
Yep.
They are taking your profile to Starbucks and going, look, Lori posted from Starbucks. Do you want all the rest of Lori's information so you can learn who your audience is? And when you think about it in that manner, it helps you understand more that really social media. I One of my profile pictures for a long time was a street sign that said you're now entering your mission field. And I think if people start really looking at it that way, instead of going, I have the right to,
Yep.
and answering the question, I think it is right to. Those are two very different things. I have the right to say this, but is it right to say this?
Yep.
What help am I going to bring to this situation? How am I going to de-escalate it? Nobody's learning the art of de-escalation these days. They're learning that rage bait is what pays your bills
Yep.
because you'll get more ad revenue from rage bait.
So true. So true. So
Yep.
how do we teach discernment without teaching shame?
Okay, so there are several things that you can always do to teach discernment. There are, like, when my kids were young and we were homeschooling them, I would do scientific experiments. Like, we made our own homemade lava lamp out of olive oil and Alka-Seltzer tab and clear water and stuff. We learned how to do that, but it taught my kids the premise. It taught them, here, oil floats. the the thing is, so on the bottom is where the water is, and you drop that Alka-Seltzer in the bottom, and that's when it starts bubbling up because it didn't respond to the oil and the water. So my kids understand that premise. We need to look at examples of things that we can do, and there are a lot of them that are coming out now. When you teach your kids to trust AI in everything, like to trust the AI search engines, what you can do is you can word something differently. And you can tell your kids, Google that. Now search for it over here and see what they're saying. And the kid is doing it. And then they learn and they go, where are the flags? And we need to be aware of what the flags are, what things, just you and I were talking off camera about how at that recent convention, I saw a New York Knicks player, and nobody else saw that New York Knicks player. And people laughed at me when I said, I'm pretty sure that's a New York Knicks player. And they were all making fun of me.
Yep.
But I had my reasons for seeing this is how they're walking, this is where they're going. They have an escort with them. And then later that night in the game, I was like, there's the dude. That is
Yeah.
the guy that I just saw earlier. And so those people now aren't going to discredit that as much. But I saw those things. The rest of the people at that con never even noticed the guy walking by them. Never clued on there's an entourage around this one person who is obviously not a nerd. They're
You're
not
right.
stopping at all these foods. They're not openly talking to people. They're just cruising through with people behind them. But those are the things. Pick up the details. Learn what things make you, we all know what an AI image looks like now.
Yep.
And for the longest time, it's because the words aren't there when AI tries to make an image. The words don't pop up correctly every time, or they don't get the eyes or the hands right. Right? Like
Yep.
you've got like 7 fingers,
Yeah.
or you have an extra thing coming out here. We've all seen the images of like the extra leg
Mhm.
coming out and showing up. Those are the things that you need to teach your children. And you need to be wise in how you're teaching your children. The other day, I had a young person who's a high schooler who told one of my clients, the person doing your social media is using AI. And I'm not. I have 2 degrees in writing. And that kid's reason was because the sentences were long and I used an M dash.
Oh, interesting.
And this person's boss laughed because he's known me since 1989. That's the reason that we are clients and friends now.
Right.
And he was like, there is no way she would ever use AI for this. She has 2 degrees in writing. And this kid was completely boggled by that idea. They did not understand how their view of it could be something different. And that is what comes when you don't teach people discernment.
Yep.
Discernment is a spiritual gift, but you can teach discernment.
Yep.
You can teach people in relationships. Wait, wait, wait. That's a red flag. It
Yeah.
is a problem if he will not tell you anything about finances, but he wants to know all about yours.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
it is it is a problem if he is on the phone like this the whole entire time that you guys are on a date, but he gets mad if you pick up your phone. We all know
Yeah.
these things. That we can teach kids those things. That's what you need to figure out with regards to media. And the media is not going away. Too many in my generation said, I grew up without the internet. My kids don't need the internet. Well, now your kids are in school and they're being handed tablets to do
Yeah.
their lessons.
Yeah.
They
Exactly.
they don't have books, and you have ill-equipped them for having an electronic device handed to them because you said, "We didn't need this." I grew up without the internet. Well, your kids are not growing up without the internet. Your kids are
Yep.
growing up in a place where politics is 24/7, where disaster is happening 24/7,
Yep.
where TikTok is the informer in your house. I had a daughter who completely quit using the shampoo and conditioner that I was buying her because TikTok told her it was bad. And she spent all the time telling me all the horrible things. And she might be absolutely right. But at the same time, that TikTok person is doing that to sell things
Yeah.
and to raise their ad revenue. So it might not be as bad as what you're saying. It probably is bad. We have chemicals and all the things, but that's where the discernment comes in. You sit down and you go, okay, let's look at the rest of their TikToks. What are they trying to get across to you?
Yeah.
Let's watch this person. You may have been watching a person and they were safe for 5 years, and then they break through somewhere and everything changes. You can't,
Mhm.
it's all changing all the time. I have a person that I followed that I loved watching for their positivity. They wrote a book, they hit the New York Times bestseller list, and now every single thing that that person puts up is griping or complaining about somebody else and calling them out and saying mean things. And I'm like, I wouldn't have followed you
Yeah.
if this was today, if I was coming across you for the first time ever. I have enough of that in my own life. Why am I following the negativity? I wanted to follow your be gracious, be kind. You don't know what that person's going through today. That's what got all your followers.
Yep.
So parents can't just assume Bluey is going to be okay all the time. You have
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
idea, that it might not shift somewhere. You can't have an assumption that these people on YouTube are going to be safe and sane all the time because they're going to go where they get the money.
Yeah. That's exactly right. That's exactly
Because
right.
that's their job. They're making money that way. They're not doing this for an altruistic method to raise. No YouTube celebrity wants to raise your children. Don't let them.
Right.
Don't let
Exactly.
them. You can research, and maybe that's something. Like if I had had more time and more energy, I would have probably been able to sit down with my daughter and go, okay, why? Let's actually do a Google search on the chemical that they're talking about. Let's
Yep.
let's look at the hair stuff. We have it in the house, all of those things. But it is very time consuming. But it's time consuming to have children.
Yeah.
And if you aren't going to take the time with them, then why?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So what does healthy media literacy look like for a teenager in 2026?
I think parents need to know who their kids are talking to all the time. I think
Mm,
that parents, even if they're teenagers, have that open door. I think that before you hand your teenager a cell phone, um, y- you hand a middle schooler a cell phone, hand them a flip phone first.
yeah.
That is my full philosophy. Before you put the entire internet and everybody good and evil and horrible and all the people into their pocket all the time for them, teach them what a phone is meant to be used for, and
Yep.
that is a flip phone. And you give them all of the etiquette that they need to learn on phone etiquette. You always answer for mom and dad. I don't care if you're in the middle of a session. If mom calls, you have to pick up the phone. If mom texts, you have this much time to get back, you know, and you teach them those bare minimums first.
Yep.
Then, when they prove that they are faithful enough, then you hand them the thing, but keep the safeguards on it.
Yep.
And then they expect mom and dad have set up guardrails for me. And they're keeping me safe because we lived with the expectations on the training wheel electronic device. And I think at night, there shouldn't be electronics in any kid's bedroom. I think that's just like we used to have a basket. And before movie time, all the kids, everybody had to put their phones in the basket before we would watch the movie. So we were all present for the movie. I think at night, you plug in your phones in some place, even if it's mom and dad's bedroom or if it's downstairs in the living room or something, they have to stay there. And that is an exercise in responsibility,
Yep.
in consequences. You know what's happening with your kids. I think you need to be aware of all of the new apps that are out because there are so many apps that are trying to subvert parenting and get kids free and get kids away from things. You know, in Britain, they just passed a law that social media is not permitted for children under 16.
Yep. I
It's
did see that.
illegal.
Yep.
And I think we are catching up to some of that because we didn't know what we didn't know
Yeah.
when the internet happened. A bunch of us grew up with the internet. I remember FTP servers and walking across campus to the college computer lab and we grew up with that. If you would have told me in 1992 that all of my children and myself would have screens in every single room and we would be constantly connected to the entire world all the time, everywhere, and that we would have libraries and cities worth of knowledge in our pocket, I
Yep.
wouldn't have believed you. I would have said that's science fiction. I would have asked what time travel novel you've been reading. Did you watch some Quantum Leaps to
Yeah.
get there? And so I think we just need to be wise about what their world is going to look like when they get to a certain age. What things do you want them to understand about the electronics? That electronics aren't necessary all day, all the time. There is an addiction.
Yep.
Be wise in it. When my kids were little, one of the things that we did was I did a poker chip system. I went and got a big box of poker chips, and they have white and blue and red. The white chips were the cheapest chips. And if my kids did a chore, they could get a white chip for it. And the white chip was worth 15 minutes of screen time. And if they did enough, they could turn them in for a blue chip. And a blue chip meant you could watch a movie.
Ooh.
And red chips were once you've gotten all the white chips and all the blue chips and you turn them in and you get the red chip, that's $5 at the store. Or it is if you save it, you could do a family night and choose, we're going to go out to the drive in and I get to pick the movie. And the things that happen with that is that kids start to see screen time not as something that they see it as a privilege instead of a right. Like right now, a lot of kids assume having my phone, it's my right. I can do this. Why are you trying to stop me? If my kids had to earn their screen time and measure their screen time, they were aware of what it took to get to that. It
Yep.
also, as a parent, it taught me which of my kids is a saver, which of my kids is a spender,
For sure.
and you can teach financial and fiscal responsibility through that.
Yep.
The kids take ownership of it because I let them build their own jars. I have one kid that had like a huge peanut butter jar and he decorated it himself. I have one who took a yogurt container and decorated it and put slits in the top. I have one who got a bank, but they owned the process then at that point.
Yep.
And then for me too, if we're having somebody over and the house is a mess, I would do a chip extravaganza. And I would sit in the living room with a big box of chips that I would say, you'll get a white chip if you clean that up. You'll get a white chip if you do this. And the kids are all working together. And then they got to leave with their white chips, their things. I have one kid who saved all of the white chips. And then when we ran out of white chips, we had to go back and go, it's okay for you to turn them in for red and blue chips. It's okay because you have all of that. And, um, another method that I thought of for my kids, I got a big piece of poster board and I got different colors of poster board and
Mhm.
I created a strip that was color coordinated for each kid and it was their own Twitter board. And I covered it in contact paper and gave them dry erase markers and I would say, go put up on the board what you're thinking right now for your update. And they got used to updating the board, but they also understood that everybody in the house could see it. And
Yep.
mom might take a picture at some point and mom might put it on social media. So they started to understand, do you really want that story about you finding a bug in the bathroom on the internet? Would
Yeah.
you put that up on a billboard? And I would say to them, like when my girls got older, I would say, what if this dude that you have a crush on just saw your whole story about being in the shower and there was a bug in there?
Yeah.
And they would go, oh, you know what? You're right. I don't want him to see that. And so that helped with that too. So coming up with that Twitter board taught what is a good social media update? How do you update? What do people get from that update? And so that might be something to help too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, all the things that you are talking about require time and effort. And that is so important. I think it's so easy now to give. One of the saddest things that I see in the daily life is these 2 or 3 year olds that are in the shopping cart and they're watching movies, right? Like, the best time with your kid is in the grocery store when they're in the little cart and you're talking about the different things. Like, those
Yeah.
conversation starters are important. Those
Yep.
pouring into your kids is important. Take the chip thing, make it your own, do your thing. Like, it's important to do those things and pour into your kids.
That's right. Your kids are not bling. You can
Yeah.
dress them up in the cutest outfits on the planet, but they're going to be functioning adults at some point. They
Yes.
they are not your accessory. They are not your bling. They're not, oh my gosh, look at my cute adorable child.
Yep.
They're people.
Yep.
And you need to do that. And I agree wholeheartedly and I think that that's a lot of parents are checking out because they're overwhelmed by all the things and they don't have the time to do some of that, and that's why I think things like the Unshackled Moms podcast, like, this is what's going to help the next generation, and I was not even close to perfect on any of that,
Yep.
but I was a working mom who worked from home, and I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do a bunch of my work until the kids got up, and then I would homeschool them, and then when they were done with homeschooling for the day, I would go back to work,
Yep. Yep.
and, that's what you need to do. And I think that that's what a lot of people don't stop to they also don't stop to realize that everything that you do, your kids are watching and they're mini sponges and they're gonna
Oh,
so if your marriage is spent with you on the phone and him on the phone, or if you don't ever talk to each other and if you don't ever do the family things, you need to be intentional about knowing what your child can manage, about
yep.
knowing what they're gonna need to manage later in
Yep.
life, and then try and give them the tools to equip them with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, on kind of a different track, so you've seen entertainment evolve throughout the decades and the cultural change, right? So, how did
Mhm.
purity culture influence the way Christians engaged in movies, television, and storytelling?
Well, what I think is funny is that purity culture gave a pinpoint focus for almost a hyper vigilant stance on one subject, which was sex.
Right.
And that's it. I have seen people who will take their children to ultra violent movies and the kids will watch people being murdered all over the screen. I mean, I watched that happen in the movie Starship Troopers. This woman brought her little children, 4 and 6 years old, to the rated R movie Starship Troopers. And these bugs are eating people very grossly. And I'm friends with a couple of the actors in Starship Troopers. So I'm allowed to say that now because I can answer for this. But you're watching these bugs like suck the brains out of people. And then this mom, when they had sex, put her hands over their eyes because that's what's evil. And that to me shows the problem with purity culture.
Yeah.
And it gives us that hyperfixation on sexual things, and it resonates now. People will say, you should go back to watching Little House on the Prairie. It was so simple and life was nice and life was good. Have you watched Little House on the Prairie since you became an adult? Because every episode doesn't have nudity in it, doesn't have sex in it, so it's okay. But they do beat the crap out of people. Pa Ingalls was beating the snot out of bad parents, abusive parenting, drunk people. They were dead at the side of the road. Mary went blind. Her child died in a fire. Like, those are all traumatic, horrifying things for people to watch. But they didn't have sex and they weren't going around in bathing suits, so it must be okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Do you think that purity culture unintentionally taught Christians to fear stories rather than understand them?
I think so, because I think all of purity culture came from a fear-based teaching method.
Yeah.
It's what I mentioned earlier about Lucy and the alcohol, is that we picked something that the best way to control our children was this, and it was unevenly taught as well. The burden for all of those things was put on the women. You can't be seductive. Men are visually stimulated while you're mentally stimulated. Nobody was on the other side telling boys, here's how you need to treat women. They
Yeah.
were saying Eve was the reason that we all are burning in hell. And if you listen to women, they're going to burn in hell. And then they expected that they got married. So everything must be perfect. There was a formula. If you wait, if you are modest, if you do all of these things, if you hold on, then your life will be perfect. But at that same time, the entire responsibility for purity culture and for sexual engagement in conversation at all, the whole burden was placed on women, on young girls. You have to forget that you're going to a swimming party and you have a one-piece bathing suit. You've got to wear the culottes and the long shirt because your butt might still show and all these things. But men are out wearing Speedos.
Yeah. Right. Which leaves
And
nothing to the imagination. Yeah.
exactly. And they are perfectly fine to take off their shirts and walk around, and they were at that point. So now what I believe that we're dealing with is a spate of marriages that happened under that false pretense of, if I do this all perfectly, he goes to church. He was the nice boy. I waited. I followed everything. I have stayed modest. I have covered myself up. Then my life is going to be perfect. I'm going to have 2.5 kids. There will be no problems. Nobody's going to rebel. I am following the formula that I was given. And what
Yep.
we're seeing now is that those men that were taught just avoid women don't know how to love women and don't know how to
Yeah.
love their wives. And they are annoyed. And women are shouldering the responsibility for all of the emotional entanglements in the marriage and all the emotional things, and they've shouldered the responsibility for all of those things, because that impurity culture, we were the downfall.
Yep.
The fact that God created us with boobs and
Right.
parts, and such, became the rallying cry that we are the whole holders of all the things, but also at the same time that men are in charge and men make the rules and we just need to do what they say. And there's a disconnect with the way that it was taught, and those teenage boys that sat there listening to women are evil, women are evil, women are evil, those are the people who are now voting that women can't have a voice. And no matter how you feel about women pastors, you know what, I'm not getting into the women pastor argument. What I
Right.
have a problem with is that the people who are voting have made public statements on podcasts, in news reports, saying women can't even talk on a podcast about a sermon because somebody might be listening and that could be teaching, and women aren't allowed to do that. And if you
Right.
have a blog, you're not allowed to even write about what you heard in the sermon last week because that's teaching. And you can't even talk about what you learned in your own Bible study
Yeah.
because that's teaching. I don't even care. it sounds horrible and I'm probably going to get hate for this, but I'm not looking at the bigger issue of pasture because I think there's so many problems with that because pasture was never mentioned in the Bible. And there's so many different irregularities. The problem that I have is it shows you the path that they're going down when they start saying, you can't even talk about this. You are not allowed to do this. You
Yeah.
have no right to sit in a sermon and go home and write a blog about it. That's a problem for me.
Yeah.
That is a big problem for me. And
Yes,
I
for sure.
believe that inherently comes from be pretty in the corner, but don't be too pretty in the corner because we might look at you
Yeah.
in a lustful way and you're in charge of our lust. And don't speak because you're only there to satisfy our lust.
Yeah.
And I believe that's where a lot of this is coming from. When I fully believe that it was, we don't know how to get kids to not have sex in the sexual revolution. Scare and fear tactics is the only way to get them under our control.
Yeah.
And, some of that too comes from AIDS. When AIDS hit, there wasn't the understanding of it and people were randomly dying and people believed you could get AIDS if you touched a table that somebody had touched that had it. And so, and it became the terror. You could die from having sex. So the
Mhm.
only way to be safe is to not have sex
Yeah.
ever, only with your one person that you follow the format for.
Right.
And when you don't give them a platform of, here, we want respect. I mean, I told my kids, if you have sex with 12 people before you get married to your husband, you have 12 people that you need to explain to your husband that you carry into that marriage with you, as opposed to you're going to die if you
Right.
do it.
Yeah.
And it will be all your fault because you
Yeah.
had boobs and you were wearing a bikini or your
Yep.
shirt was unbuttoned a little bit. Forget about him. He'll be fine because he's a man and men are fine.
Yep. Yep.
So that's what I think we're coming. The pendulum always is swinging. It just depends on where we are in the pendulum. And I think we're coming back to the consequences of those teachings
Yeah.
from when we were growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, fear is such an incredibly powerful thing, right? Like, it's been used for hundreds and thousands of years.
Yep.
Um, I think that, I just learned, interestingly enough, I just learned and it'll be on another podcast, but the, Bill Gothard teachings, one of the things
Oh,
that they teach is that if you have a miscarriage, that is God's punishment on you as a
yep.
woman. Like,
Yep.
there's not enough pain and suffering in losing a baby, but now,
Yep.
it's your fault.
Yes. And everything is our fault.
Yeah,
When I was diagnosed with cancer in 2014, and I shared with some people at the church that I had received a cancer diagnosis.
yeah,
The immediate response to me was, what sin did I commit to do that? And it was decided through the church, through everybody gossiping, that the reason that I got cancer was because I had watched the Harry Potter movies. And I thought, wow, what about that? What about the whole book of Job, where they're saying, what did Job do to deserve all these things? You know what I mean? And he didn't. What he did was live a faithful, righteous lifestyle. But you also forget people asking Jesus, what did this man do to deserve this being blind?
yeah,
And Jesus is like, he didn't. His parents didn't sin. He didn't sin. He is blind in order to glorify God.
yeah,
And I think that that becomes the problem. And then, you know, I've heard lots of women who have said those things. I have not heard as much on the men's side. Like if a man says that he's got cancer, where the church is immediately coming out and asking the question, what did you do to get cancer?
yeah,
I feel like it's a more prevalent thing in that feminine side of things, in the feminine side of community. And that is because women are less apt to challenge. Men will challenge, like, and I think they would know there's a fight coming. Like, why would you walk up to a person and say that they got cancer because they watched Harry Potter? Um, that kind of thing. And I don't think that men are maybe they are. Maybe somebody will come in and explain that I'm wrong and I missed that. And if they do, I would appreciate it. But I don't see other men saying, "What did you do to deserve
Yep.
this?
That's right.
What did you do that your wife left you?"
Yeah.
Um, Yet a single woman walking into a church is immediately suspect because we must be looking for every man and we must want a man and we, you know what I mean? But a man, no one is saying, "Why did your wife leave you?"
Yeah.
They want to hear what the wife did wrong.
Yep. It's so true. It's so
A-
true.
And it's a thing. And I think until we get to a more equal standing where marriage counseling is not, the woman needs to submit better, but the man also needs to love her as Christ loves the church.
Yeah.
You've got to get both sides of it in. Like, you're not teaching the men how to be responsible for their emotions and their feelings and not blame somebody. But Patrick Weaver says, "Making me a better victim doesn't make you not an abuser."
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And I think that that happens a lot within the faith realm on
Yeah.
that thing. So that's where I believe that purity culture, we are reaping the harvest of what those seeds were, and we're seeing it on different levels. And it's not only about sex. It's become completely taking women out of the equation, yet making them responsible for the running of the church. The number of people that I have seen that said, "We need you doing the breakfast and doing the lunches and teaching VBS and teaching all those things. Like, the church would crumble and fall apart without you, but we don't want to hear from you." And so I think that comes from separating boys and girls in 1989 and telling the boys, "Don't look at the girls, don't talk to the girls,
Yeah.
don't do this with the girls," and telling the girls, "Don't make a boy look at you."
Yeah. That's right. That's right. And I think that, in some of the circles that we've come from, like I keep hearing this new trend of um women saying, "I am not intelligent enough to vote." Like I have to
Right.
have my husband vote for me because like I let my emotions get in the way and I just am not able to vote. Like that purity culture has just leached its way into so many different spots in the
Yep.
church.
It does, and it has become prevalent and pervasive, and when the women see that and they're like, "I don't want responsibility for this, and I don't want responsibility for that." Okay, but you're taking that away from other people,
Yeah.
and you're happy to be the person that sings, "La, la, 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 don't tell me anything else, I don't wanna hear any other perspectives," and that's another problem with social media is that nobody is listening to learn,
Yeah.
they're listening to argue. And they
So
have
true.
their lines, they have their things already set up, and they make an assumption. If someone says this statement, they add all this other baggage to it, and the number of times that I have gone in, like, I was actually shaken a little bit before we started recording because this woman said in this group, she was talking about the way her husband was treating her, and all of these women were saying, "He needs to have some responsibility in your marriage as well." And this one woman kept popping in and saying, "You need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this," and putting the onus on the women. And one woman popped up and said, biblically, she's not asking for anything major, she's asking for survival, and he is not
Yeah.
providing it. And she said, "What are the scriptures that show you?" She says, "I want biblical proof of what you're saying, like how we are supposed to expect men to treat us." And I popped in and I said, "Well, the Bible is all through how you're supposed to treat other people. Forget marriage. Everybody brings up the marriage verses, but God tells you how to treat your neighbor. And as a wife, you should expect at least that bare minimum. Treat others the way you'd like to be treated, go the extra mile, prayer. And if the husband isn't doing that, they aren't following biblical values." And this woman popped in and said, "Do be serious and stop being silly." And I get, it aggravated me, admittedly. But she went on to say none of those are a reason for divorce. And I said, I never mentioned that they were a reason for divorce. You asked
Yeah.
for biblical, scriptural proof of where we can expect men to treat us a certain way. And that's it. You didn't ask for biblical reasons for marriage, divorce. You didn't ask for it. You said where are the scriptures to back up that husbands are supposed to treat us this way?
Yeah.
And I give them to you. And I actually again went and looked at her profile, and she is 22 and single and looking for a husband. Then you shouldn't be speaking up about a woman's marriage.
Yeah.
That is
Exactly.
not your place. That is not your place. And you're coming off all self righteous and you're reading things into it that I never said.
Yeah.
And you are labeling me a person. And so those are all things that's an activity that parents can do with their children. Read this comment now. Tell me what you think this person believes about this.
Yep.
And then you go, where did you get that? What were the things that led you to believe this is that person's belief? And then teach kids to step out of that
Yep.
and stop making the assumptions and
Yeah.
stop filling in the gaps with your stuff.
Yeah. It's just another way that you can teach that critical thinking that we were talking about.
Yep.
How do you
Mhm.
think that streaming has changed storytelling for the better or for worse?
I actually think it's changed it for the worse. That was a very instant response, right? Um, it's the writer in me. It's because Netflix and some other streaming services are now requiring that we have characters in the script remind you of what the end goal is or remind you of the circumstances or the situations verbally because people are not watching, they've got it playing in the background. They are engaging with it. And so in the scripts, we have to explain to people repeatedly what the stakes are, what is happening. And that bothers me because to me, that's not good storytelling. We are
Right?
losing the arts. Like, nobody told Hemingway, people aren't going to read this book. So you're going to have to tell people on every page what your goal is. No, you engage with it and you do that. And then I also believe we are not teaching people how to wait for things. When you drop an entire season of a program and they can binge it in one afternoon, where is the journey that they're taking with people?
Yeah.
And where is that engagement? And then it's created a subculture of cancellation because they want those instant numbers and they don't give programs a chance to gather up the numbers, and they immediately will cancel the program because you're not following, but it's only been out for a month. And the shorter seasons, the shorter amounts of episodes, and the 2 to 3 years between seasons on streaming, it gives people a disconnect. They are not invested like we were when you had a cliffhanger at the end of a season and you had to wait the summer
Yeah.
till the fall premiere date and nobody knew who shot JR. And that's all we're talking about all summer
That's
long.
right. Yeah.
But
Exactly.
if Dallas was only 6 1-hour episodes, would anybody care who shot JR?
Yeah. Yep. It's true.
You know, but in those days, we had 20 plus episodes. So you had 20 hours to get to understand, like on NCIS, why Gibbs is the way he is. And you now have cultivated that audience to a point that we all know if somebody hands Gibbs a screen or a cell phone, he's going to be like, nope. And we all laugh at that.
Yeah.
But if it's boiled down to information packed 6 hour episode, you don't have the ability to get to know that character and to follow their journey and to care about them. So when the program gets canceled, we all don't care. And so we've just become a consumption society with that. Whereas television used to be something that, or shows like that, they were that momentary getaway. It was Thursday night viewing. You would sit down and you would watch Friends and Seinfeld and Frasier, and then you'd watch ER. And that isn't happening anymore. We're just throwing all the content out there and people are consuming without stopping to think what it takes to build that. And it'll just keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And there's an argument happening right now on Threads that somebody came out and said people need to use simpler words when they're writing because they didn't understand the what that word meant. And there's an argument of why are we having to write to the lowest common denominator? Why reading and television and ABC after school specials used to educate you and lift things up and bring points across. And now you're asking us to boil it down to the lowest common denominator and
Yeah,
stop using big words. And if you can't get it across in less than 30 seconds, it doesn't matter.
that's such a lost art. Like,
Yes.
I think that it just prohibits growth in so many incredible ways, right? Like, because, like, you hear a new word, say you have an episode and there's a new word and it's used like 4 or 5 times, you have to learn how
Yeah.
to put that in context, and
Right.
you have to actually use our brains, right?
Yep.
And now it's just as like, bleep, like, if you put it
Yes.
at that lowest level, you're not able to engage in what you're watching in anything.
Exactly. And if you have constant noise in the background, then you don't live with peace at
Yeah.
all. You get freaked out when things are quiet and when people aren't talking to you, and you don't know who you are when there isn't noise coming at you.
Yep. Yep. That's so true. That's so true. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. So you were close enough to witness the impact of September 11th from a military base. How did that
Yes.
experience change your understanding of why stories matter?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one, and it is still resonating with me because I lived an hour outside New York City on a military base when 9/11 happened.
Yep.
And people can read my story. I have it on my blog. I was a pregnant military spouse. One of the planes went over my house and it was going the wrong direction. So I knew because we were on a military base, the flight line's over here.
Hmm.
Planes don't fly this way because
Yep.
they're always flying this way. And it was close enough to the ground that I could see faces in the window.
Mm,
And then later you find out that's one of the planes that went down. But the stories were what made it more real for people outside of the news reports and the things. And that's what you're seeing now is you're beginning to see on social media, the story from this person who ran down all the flights of stairs and they lived and what have they done with their lives now? And
yep.
they're able to put some things behind the scenes on that. Story is what connects all of us and makes it real
Yep.
and makes life real. And people think, making up stories means that you live in a fictitious world. No, story is what connects us and makes a situation real for us.
Yep.
And even in the course of working with directors or actors, if I can create a story picture to explain a concept to them, it makes it better and easier for them to get. Like one of my favorites is that publicity is like buying the car that your partner always wanted.
Hmm.
You had the factory custom build it in their color and you got like a purple Jeep and you ordered it and you have to keep everything locked down on that or else your partner's going to find out. And if you're going to all of that trouble, then you're going to make sure when you give that card to that person with the big bow on the front, you know where they are. You've got cameras lined up, you've got
Yeah.
pictures lined up, you're ready at every point. And it's
Right.
the same way when you're making a movie. You've spent 18 months to 2 years working on a film, sometimes 7 or more. It took Hugh Jackman 7 years to get The Greatest Showman put together. People did not believe in him for that. And so he just kept promoting that. So you spent all that time working on something and then you want to blow the publicity aspect of it. And so it's equivalent to you have the whole surprise setup, and then your kid walks in the door and goes, "Why is there a car with a bow on it out front?"
Right.
And you can explain to filmmakers exclusives, and if you put it on your social media, then Deadline isn't going to pick it up, and all of these things. But when I give them that story word picture, the emotion hits them, and they go, "Oh, yes. Okay, now I get it because all the emotion is involved." And when you can get the story of who people are or what they are experiencing or their firsthand views, then you're less likely to blow it off as AI. You also get more of an impact. And I believe that we all learn better empathy with stories,
Yeah.
because the number of people who have been touched by the fact that I was pregnant and living on a brand new military base where I didn't know anybody and watched the airplane go over and then went inside and took a shower. And when I came out of the shower, the plane had hit the Pentagon. And Oliver North came right out and said, "We believe that this plane that went down in Pennsylvania was headed for," and he named the location, and it was the office where my husband worked.
Mm.
And they were not allowed to have cell phones. And when somebody says that, they immediately understand the gravity of that moment. Whereas if you're just watching a 30-second reel of the towers going down, you lose all of those. We all know the let's roll stories. We know the people who left the messages for people. That's what sticks with us as humans.
Yep.
And that's what helps us to remember that I don't care if you're black, if you're white, if you're a man, if you are an immigrant from another country. On 9/11, we were all watching the same thing.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Every one of us. And I can hug you and I can kiss you and I don't care what color your skin is. And I can say, I'm going to pray with you and I'm going to love you. And if we keep boiling things down to the lowest common denominator in 15 or 30-second bites, we lose all of that humanity and we become just a video digital AI society.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So in hospital rooms and recovery centers, what kinds of stories seem to help people the most?
Encouragement, any kind of encouragement or hope. Anytime that we go in, the escape of getting away from all of the burdens that you're carrying. Every event that I've done at a Wounded Warrior Center, you can see it when people walk in the door. The burden of their lives is sitting on them. They may have just gotten the worst news of their life. They may be struggling. They may be holding things together. If you can just give them, "We haven't forgotten you.
Yeah.
You're not sitting," because it's very isolating.
Yeah.
You are not sitting here by yourself in a void, and there are people who love you. And just the encouragement. Laughter really is a true thing. It can make you forget for a little while. It really is medicine
Yep.
for people's souls.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons I do things with Star Wars. People joke and tease me that I'm an older cosplayer. It's because I have worked with Wounded Warriors and I have seen the magic that happens when you've lost 3 limbs in an IED attack and you're blind or you've burned part of your body and you light up like Christmas when someone hands you a lightsaber.
Yeah. True.
That light up like Christmas, I believe in magic, not demonic magic, but I believe we can create magic for people.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I have created magic for someone who's never held a lightsaber. You saw the picture that of Tom Hiddleston. He lit up like that when my son said, "Would you like to hold a lightsaber?" Of course I would. And the smile on his face is genuine. It's legit. How do I hold it so I'm cool? And what do I look like? Because that moment is magic. And
Mhm.
movies created that. Everybody knows who a lightsaber is. Even if you're a Trekkie and you hate it, you know what a lightsaber is. And we
Yeah.
can all be united over that cultural reference. And if I can give someone that joy, I had a little girl that I taught when she was 3. And this goes back to the enjoying not being in costume. I was just OB mom at that point. I was just in jeans and a Star Wars t-shirt. But a friend of mine was dressed as Darth Vader, full screen accurate Darth Vader with the boots and everything. He was 6'7". He had the voice modulator. He had everything on. It's very imposing, right? But these people had this daughter with them and she was watching our battles and she's screaming, go get him. And she's 3, right? And I say to the parents, "Do you mind if I bring her with me?" And I pull her over, and I'm pointing at Darth Vader. I know that he's a dad who has 2 kids that are the same age as that little girl, but she doesn't know that. And I look at her and I say, "Do this now. Push the force over there." And she acted with it and did it and stumbled backwards. And that little girl, for the rest of that engagement, whenever they walked by the table, was walking on air. I'm a Jedi. Did you see that? Don't mess with me. And that's the magic that we can create for people. And that's what you need to do. If a kid's in the hospital and they haven't gotten out of bed for a while, hand them the lightsaber and let them beat the crap out of Darth Vader.
Yeah,
give them that moment of triumph and excitement, and we all get with it. Show them Captain America's shield and say, "You've got this." It's the magic that we can create for people, and I'm all about creating that magic.
I love that. I love that. So what is one story that just really has impacted you personally?
Well, I have a lot of them, but one of the big ones for me is that one of the first events that I did for Wounded Warriors, we took a couple of busloads. We took 150 Wounded Warriors and their families up to South by Southwest, and we spent the day up there. We got them, VIP access. These are Wounded Warriors and their families. We
Yeah.
got them movie screenings. South by Southwest gave us stuff. We had sponsors. And on the way home, I was exhausted because I had run that whole day and I was in charge of it. And I had walked all over, and the only thing I wanted to do was sleep on the bus on the way home. But a little boy who was like 10 sat next to me, and he spent the whole hour and a half drive talking to me the whole time, like the way that only a 10-year-old will. And I do not know anything that he was talking about. I'm not into anime. He was into anime. He was explaining these characters and the fights and the battles. And I got to see this and I got to see that. And I was so excited. It was really cool. And he just needed a person to talk to. And I was exhausted. I'm nodding. Yeah, no, that's cool. But in my
Yeah.
head, I'm going, oh, you know. But when we got home and we got off the bus, a man came up to me and he was blind. And he took my hand and he said, "I recognize your voice because I was sitting behind you on the way home." And being blind, he obviously recognized my voice, not my face. And he said, "The part you don't know is that when my son was like 5, that's when I got sent overseas for a 2-year tour. And in the 8th month of the 2nd year, I stepped on an IED. So I had been away from my son for 2 years. So you leave, he's 5, he's 7 now.
Yep.
Stepped on an IED, and this man had to spend time in Germany and then England and then Walter Reed in the United States and then come down here to San Antonio to Brooke Army Medical Center. And that was finally where the military gave them orders for the family to join them. And when that happens, the wife is in charge of packing up everything in their other place and moving cross country by themselves. And he said, "My son is like 9 now because all of those stopping in Germany and everything, those were all 6 to 8 months to a year of health surgeries, getting your limbs back, learning how to walk again, learning how to function as a blind man."
Yep.
So he said, "My son doesn't remember me. And I look different because I've got burns so my pictures don't match anything." And he said, "I have not been able to have my son talk to me because I'm a total stranger that is now living with his mom and he doesn't understand anything." And he said, "But that whole ride home, I got to learn every single thing that he was into because you let him talk to you
Oh,
and you let him go on and on." And he said, "Now I have a point of reference." And he said, "Thank you for an event that includes my family because military events normally only include the military member."
mhm.
And that was I didn't have to do anything. I just sat there and let a 10-year-old kid talk to me. But it made a life-changing opportunity for that father to know how to talk to their child now.
Yeah.
And you never know what those things are gonna be. And I just wanna be the person who is present, who says, "God, I wanna go where you want me to go." This was not a Christian event in any way, shape, or form. South by
Yep.
Southwest, nothing that we did was a Christian event, but
Right.
I still feel like I was where God placed me to
Yeah.
create healing, and I didn't have to do anything to create that healing. I think all of us look and go, "It's my job to fix you. It's my job to get you on." I literally just put together an event and sat and let a 10-year-old kid talk to me for an hour and a half on the way home, and dad said that I changed his life.
Yeah. Yep. You never know when that is gonna be, the case. You have
Yeah.
done some amazing things for wounded warriors. How did you get connected with them? And why is it so special to you?
Well, I was a military spouse for over 20 years.
Mhm.
That being, like, basically right at the in the middle of 9/11 will shift your perspective when you're on a military base.
Yep.
It is real. It is every day. Your husband has a go bag at the door, and they could leave for work today and find out they're going to Iraq tonight. That will shift your gears. But what
Mm.
ended up happening for me is that I am always the person who wants to know how I can help. And that's what people, as soon as somebody tells me anything, I'll say, "What do you need? How
Yep.
can I help? How can I make things better? What can I do?"
Yep.
I want to be one of the helpers that Mr. Rogers talked about. And so when 9/11 happened and then we ended up going to war in Iraq and Afghanistan, I was seeing the husbands who were leaving on the plane. It was in my backyard. The
Yes.
husbands who are leaving and the wives who are left behind. And one of the things we had a science fiction television show that got canceled, and the fans wanted to do something different. And so I said, I live on a military base. If y'all want to send me DVDs or VHS tapes, at the time they were both available. If y'all want to send me copies, I will get them on the planes because, as I said, the flight line was right behind my house. I knew who to talk to on base. And
Right.
we worked out a deal where that instead of going through a whole bunch of government standards, we knew who all the pilots were and we asked them to put them in their bags. And then when they would get to the base, they'd put them at the base exchange.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening is that the fans of that television show sent over $50,000 worth of DVDs to my home.
Mm.
And all I did was just keep taking them over and keep taking them to the troops. And then people started noticing the video company called me and said, "Who are you?" Like all these people are buying copies of this program and sending them to you. And then the Jim Henson Company worked on the program. It was one of their programs, and the word got to them. They're, "Who are you?" And Brian Henson called my house, and TV Guide covered it. And I started expanding. What can we do bigger? What about when there's hospitals? What about when people come home? So I called Walter Reed and Bethesda Naval Medical Center and I asked them, "Do you have the capability if we were to send DVDs to you? Do you have DVD players?" And they didn't. And I said, "What if we got you DVD players on the carts and you could bring them into people's rooms?" And so the fans donated that and we were able to get that delivered. What struck me and what made this for me for the rest of my life as something is that one of the guys at Walter Reed that I spoke with said, "We get donations all the time." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "But we get the movies nobody else wants. Or they send us military movies." So you have a guy who his vehicle just got blown up in Iraq and four people in there died and he's the only person who lived. And the movie that you felt appropriate to send to them was Saving Private Ryan.
Right.
And that hurt my heart because there was nobody providing movies for the wives either. The
Yeah.
wives come to see them and you're living with watching your husband or maybe it's a wife and a husband and you're watching your spouse go through the hardest things and you don't know, you might get a call tomorrow that they didn't live. And there's nobody providing Hallmark movies for them.
Yeah.
There's nobody providing an escape. And when the guy at Walter Reed said, "We get the movies that is obvious nobody else wants," like you can tell they were cleaning out their own things and we're giving you the scraps. That was when I was like, "No, that doesn't happen." And then I just started paying attention a little bit more. The military, people always think about the military at Christmas and at Thanksgiving because it's all about family and they're almost always separate.
Mhm.
But those same people are away from their families for July 4th
Yeah.
and for their birthday
Yep.
and for anniversaries, and they're on their own. And I just started seeing the joy when I would bring like the cast of Friday Night Lights down here. And I saw that it was changing, it was that magic. I'm changing people's lives and making things work. And then like there's an other side of it when the actors get to experience that magic and they see the joy. And like I will never forget Kyle Chandler was sitting down talking to somebody and it was a woman and she had lost her arm. And her biggest thing was, "All of my guys are still over there fighting and I'm here." And he had to leave the room and he said to me, "Lori, she's literally battling. She lost a limb and she is learning how to function without a limb and is more worried about them."
Yep.
And so Kyle Chandler, after that, he and his wife started a military foundation. And Connie Britton, who was there, her next program after Friday Night Lights was Nashville. And there's an entire season storyline of her touring with the troops. And you know that came because of what they learned sitting with people in a hospital room or talking. So the magic goes both ways, and I believe it's good seeds. And so those are the things. And I have a million stories about troops and how a stupid thing like a superhero day changed their entire perspective that day or gave them
Yep.
hope or whatever. And so I'll always keep doing that.
It's always one of my favorite things to talk to you about is that because it just lights your face up and you just glow with so much happiness of all the things. And I'm so proud of you that you didn't just say, I have this good idea and no, you said yes. And you like move forward in a way that you could and you move forward and God has just continued to bless in so many incredible ways.
Oh, thank you. I cherish that. I really appreciate that. It means a lot. I have always said in my life, I don't know how to do the next step necessarily. And there have been things that God's placed in front of me, and I go, I don't, why? This is not
Yeah.
what I do. But I adopted the belief about 10 years ago that if God opens a door, I'm going to dance through it.
Yep.
And I
I
may not
love
know
it.
what I'm doing. And it might be a dorky dance and it might be a stupid dance. But if God opens that door, I can know something good's gonna come on the other side of it.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I know that you're in heat conditions and
I am.
I'm just so grateful that you spent some time with us. I think you just have such amazing insight and I just appreciate you so much.
Well, and I appreciate you, and I'm really yeah, thank you for reaching out to me and for being faithful even when I had to shift gears on the date and everything. I apologize for that, change, but I
Nope, I would have
appreciate it.
shifted gears too, trust me.